everybody, it's Romania Black, and I'm not gonna lie, as much as I wanted to dive into chapter 96, the schedule for my channel has been crazy the last 2 weeks, nearly 2 weeks, and I had to hold off on recording this chapter set, which we're only looking at one chapter tonight. We're only looking at chapter 96 of Scum Villain Self-Saving System, and I'm ready for some Shang Qinghua. I've got coffee. It's got booze in it. We are ready to go. I've got some comments to talk about. We've got a tiny little crumb of feral fandom, but I am ready. But my channel has been so crazy the month of December, and I've been catching up with everything in December and worrying about that first, that I knew this was going to start out the year. So I was like, I'll just put it on the back burner. And then when I got to the end of chapter 95, I said I was going to put this on the back burner. So I have been stewing for 12 days, y'all. I have been stewing for 12 days, waiting. The 12 days of Christmas has passed, and I'm ready for chapter 96. So yeah. And that's way too hot, but we've got stuff to talk about before we get to that. We might as well just start with the feral fandom. We might as well get it out of the way because it has to do with Qingqiu, and I have a feeling we're not going to touch base on them this chapter, so might as well talk about it now. Look, Melted Mush has been talked about with the fandom in my comments and on Discord, but Melted Mush is just such an amazing artist. They're so good. They're able to get these little nuanced details in both Shen Qingqiu's face as well as Lo Binghei's face, and just makes these characters come to life. And then, just as you're like, oh, that's really cute, and the detail's amazing on that, they give you octopus being gay. Or Bing May. Rather, I honestly, compared to the feral hairless cat thing that they made Shen Qingqiu, I actually am totally fine with octopus being gay. It's clingy, like he is, and possibly squirts out Black Lotus ink. What else can we ask for? But yeah, I thought that was really great. So I thought that feral fandom pick was amazing. So thank you. I believe it was Pancake who shared it. So thank you very much. Now, I've got a couple comments I want to talk about. One is particularly from Anime Annie. They talked about the Japanese cover for volume 2, definitely making them laugh, saying it was duping. I loved how they phrased this, duping new readers into thinking the cover means something different, especially with the gossamer fabric hanging down around them, creating this more sensuous feel, which made Anime Annie consider, what if the cover is from Liu Qingge's perspective and is the nightmare of what befell Shen Qingqiu's corpse in Lo Binghei's hands? That perspective and the idea that the Japanese cover for volume 22, which shows all these pinks and reds and gossamer and Lo Binghei with Shen Qingqiu in his arms, and we, the audience that have read the book, know that it's a corpse version of him. If that's from Liu Qingge's perspective, that is genius. I would die. That is amazing. I really wish that it was. But on a less happy note, as fun as that is, Anime Annie also pointed out, in terms of with chapter 85 and 86, they said, I don't know if it's the translation, but just using the term capitulated, which means to surrender oneself, for the beginning of Shen Qingqiu and Lo Binghei becoming intimate in chapter 85 definitely makes a little red flag start to rise for me. It's the kind of word that definitely brings with it negative connotations in comparison to being willing or enthusiastic as a participant in intimate relationships. And you know what? That's fine. I agree with that, but we're not going to worry about Shen Qingqiu and Lo Binghei right now because we have Shang Qinghua to deal with, which is super exciting. Now, a couple weeks ago, by the time that you all watch this, it will have been a couple weeks. A couple weeks ago, I had this comment that came up on Discord, and it has honestly stewed in my brain as I'm recording this. And one of the reasons I wanted to wait a little bit before recording this particular chapter, because I only have this week, next week, and the following week left of the series, is I wanted to give some time before the dreaded chapter 89 and 90 came out. And it's come out on Patreon. There's not been a lot of people comment, which is fine. I understand why you wouldn't. I wasn't in a great place when I recorded that, but the people that have commented for the most part have been super kind and supportive, even if they, I don't know if they agree or disagree, but they've been kind and considerate regardless, right? But I did have one comment on Discord pop up, and next week will be hopefully the last week that I have any comments from YouTube with those two chapters, because they're the ones I dread the most, and then we'll be able to round out the rest of the series on a high note, which will be really great. But There was an individual that left a comment because my moderator, I had made a point to say that my moderator had encouraged me to keep reading, which I wanted to bring this comment up because here I am super excited about this chapter in particular. And so the individual asked why the moderator would encourage me to keep reading after chapter 89-90 because of my reaction. And so again, I said this last week, the circumstance was that all I asked was at the end of volume 3, I'm like, is volume 4 worth reading? And yes or no. And the moderator said yes. And that's all he said. They're like, yes. And so I did have to question that with chapter 89-90 because I was like, well, is it? But we all know where we are now. Each week after 89 and 90 have been better than the last and have made me really, really happy that I continued reading. So I wanted to respond to that Discord comment because it kind of was very jarring for me. And I feel like if I don't address it, it's going to nag at me for the rest of my life. So anyway, I hope that me continuing the story was worth it. I'm definitely a completionist, so unless I'm just entirely disliking the whole journey, I usually wouldn't want to stop. So this was the third time, Scum Villain is the third series that I've contemplated stopping a story on this channel. Oddly enough, all 3 of the series I've contemplated stopping have happened this last year, so 2024 was a crazy year. The first series that I contemplated stopping but finished out the season was simply because I just didn't like it anymore. And I honestly should have stopped that story. It wasn't the content necessarily. I just didn't care for it anymore. I had a lot of issues with it and I was like, this isn't fun to watch anymore. But I kept watching kind of like as a hate watch. And I should have stopped that. That series, and I'll talk about it if you've not watched my update video for the new year, I talk about it there. But I should have stopped that story because it just wasn't fun anymore. The second story was specifically because of sexual assault. But it was way more than just the instances that happened. The instances that happened were kind of like chapter 89 and 90 to me, but I kept going and I did end up happier than I was thinking that I would be in hindsight. So that led me to kind of want to work through this story because I was contemplating with the second story quitting it and then was like, no, I'm going to keep going. And I ended up being okay with it. So that kind of encouraged me to keep going with this series. But you know, just because one part of a series makes me mad, I think that I should be allowed to work through my emotions in front of you all and try to explain them and then move forward because, you know, if you're a victim of SA, you have to do that on a day-to-day basis. So you can't just close the book and be like, well, I guess I won't go through life now since I'm not comfortable. You have to find a way through it and it sucks. And I liked opening up with you all to kind of talk about that as I went. And the comment kind of talked about tossing it back onto the fandom, which I get that if you like a story, you don't want to hear negativity about it. And I get that because when I'm on the Discord and stuff, I'm kind of like, oh, save your negativity till the end of the story. You know, I say that in Discord, you know, to do it after I'm finished and people can bring up what they don't like after the fact and everything. But that's mainly because I'm a content creator and that affects the content that I create, you know, and it is a kind of a selfish request. I get that. But I would say, you know, if somebody wanted to leave my channel because they don't like the things that I'm saying, that's fine. You're not going to hurt my feelings. You know, unless you announce it to me as a statement, then yeah, that would be rude. It would hurt me as a person. Like if you don't like what I'm talking about on the channel, just quietly walk away. You can leave. I'm not going to notice. It's okay. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But it would be horrible if you were like, well, I'm leaving your channel now and made this big comment about it. I'm like, that would be rude. So please don't do that. But anyone is free to walk away from my reactions if they're just not for you anymore. No harm, no foul. I get it. I've done the same. So it's fine. But that's the main gist of it. But this individual left 2 statements that I wanted to address because they left me with a very visceral reaction. And I had to kind of like sort myself out for days after reading them to figure out what I wanted to say. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I held back from recording this for a while. But I'm going to read kind of what that comment was. And I'm not going to mention names or anything because I don't want anybody to bother this person, but it just has bothered me. So I feel like I have to address it. They talked about, I remember these chapters, which are chapters 89-90, on a first-time reading stream of another YouTuber. And everyone just had so much fun, both the YouTuber and the chat. But if something is triggering, then I think it's it's good to think of your feelings first and stop just in case. You can never fully predict what can make one throw a book at the wall next time. But again, for many people, these chapters don't invoke such negative emotions. Good thing that hasn't happened again, of course. And I thought of that phrase that, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it. Now, obviously, that doesn't really apply to me as a content creator in this situation because it's my job. You all are paying me to comment my thoughts on the material that I'm watching or reading. But, if you went to a channel of someone who has openly said that they're a victim of sexual assault, and I'm not going to graphically go into detail and tell you what that person did to me, but please know it's a very personal part of my being. I haven't even told my family about my experience. I feel there is this parasocial separation between me and the people watching my videos that makes it easier for me to open up and talk about it. And it's been liberating in so many ways. But, if you're in the server, in the Discord of someone who has gone through that, and you talk about how you and your friends had such a great time laughing and having fun with a chapter that you just watched someone be triggered by, and then said, for many, these chapters don't evoke negative emotions, that is kind of invalidating of someone's experience and their emotions. And that's not cool. And it's just a word of etiquette for real world communication. I wouldn't do that. And so you could have just kept that comment to yourself or spoiler tagged it so that I wouldn't have seen it, and it could be mindful of people, myself and others that are in that Discord included, that would have had to read that. So I'm lucky at least that, I'm lucky to say that at least the people having that reaction party and who have enjoyed chapter 89, they have the privilege of never having their consent taken from them, or be in a situation where they were forced into a sexual act that left them permanently scarred. And I hope they never have to encounter that experience, ever. So it was just upsetting to read, and there was no seeming recognition of how they could have been hurting the person they were addressing. And then to address the second part of that comment, which says, and I quote, "There's a difference between feeling strong negative emotions while reading, which author they intended, like your favorite character dying, versus feeling them about the work and what it's doing itself, certain parts of it affecting you in a wrong way." And yes, I believe that I've been transparent in the discussions about that. I had a similar reaction with the second series I talked about earlier, Berserk is what it is. But anyway, as I've said in the discussion and the videos since that one, that was my reaction. It is what it is. And luckily, thanks to my wonderful moderator's consideration, who has been super supportive of me and my experience, they know that I could push through and keep reading to experience the good of the story that remained. And so far, I have. So I'm sorry I had to go on that tangent because that comment has not sat well with me for weeks since I read it in the Discord, and I feel like I needed to address it out loud. So, Happy New Year! I am going to make sure, with the moderator's help, that the show and series in the replacement poll for Scum Villain either steers away from long-term relationships like Qingqiu, unless they turn around and have communication and fix things. Then I'm fine with it, or they don't have any essay or stuff like that altogether. Like, I'm fine with it in small doses if it gets reconciled and there's communication and they work through it in the long run. I've watched Given. I've seen other series that have essay in them, but it's just Scum Villain hasn't done that. And that was such a negative experience for me. So yeah, but hopefully y'all understood what I was getting at, and I hope that came across okay. So that takes a lot for me to say that, and to get through it without crying. It's a new year. I feel like that's an accomplishment. But anyway, so that's all I had to say about that. I've talked for nearly 15 minutes. I'm just delaying the inevitable, but I'm really, really honestly excited to get into this chapter set and see what it gives us. I am so ready, y'all. I cannot even tell you, but we're not going to waste any more time. Chapter 96, y'all. I can't believe it. So we're going to start chapter 96 of Scum Villain Self-Saving System. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1. Let's do this. So When we last left off, it was mid-chapter. How dare you, MXTX? As we talk about Shang Qinghua, and they had decided that they were just gonna go straight to Mobei-Jun. They weren't gonna be able to run away from him, so let's just meet our doom head on, shall we? Chapter 96. Just as he finished speaking, he was firmly pried out of the cart and thrown to the ground. His body fallen right in front of Mobei-Jun's boots. His sword still halfway in its sheath. His heart not quite decided as to whether he should draw his sword. Mobei-Jun sneered, an ice-cold glint of blue flashing through his eyes. No sooner said than done. Shang Qinghua threw himself forward and cling to his thighs with a plop. Every one of his Xizhong made an aggrieved face. Mobei-Jun made a blank one. Shang Qinghua fell to one knee. "My king, please let me follow you for the rest of my life." Mobei-Jun tried to throw Shang Qinghua off with a kick, but to no avail. His adhesive ability was just too strong. Mobei-Jun then tried to kill him and be done with it, but that proved even more difficult, just like a gecko clinging to a wall. What a lizard! Shang Qinghua nimbly crawled back and forth, but managed to stay stuck firmly to his thighs. Mobei-Jun couldn't help but steam with rage. As the Onding Pink outer disciples bore witness to this incredible feat, they were overjoyed. They threw down their goods and fled. Just as Shang Qinghua was silently cursing them out, not 3 seconds later, a wave of screams came from down the road. Dozens of ice shards and strands thin as silk threads had pierced their chests. In a mad dance of silver light, droplets of blood flew in all directions. Upon seeing this, Shang Qinghua's grip on Mobei-Jun's thighs became as strong as steel. He started to chatter incessantly, "Oh, my king, please accept me! I'm very useful!" Mobei-Jun seemed to cant his body. "Oh, what use are you? I can serve tea, carry water, wash clothes, fold blankets." Wait, no. Shang Qinghua considerately gave him an analysis. "You see, my king, I can serve you as an undercover agent in Sangzhong Mountain, pass on intelligence, and help the demon race accomplish the magnificent feat of conquering the human realm." I like that how he described himself as basically doing stereotypical gender normative housewife work, and then he was immediately like, "Housewife work? Oh no, never mind. I'll be an espionage, you know." Mobei-Jun laughed. "An outer disciple, and an Onding Peak outer disciple at that. With you as a spy, how long would it take to accomplish that feat?" "Don't discriminate against my peak," Shang Qinghua said awkwardly. "That isn't very nice. Why does even the demon race look down on us?" And the disdain for Onding Peak even surpassed that of an outer disciple. "That's too much. It's really too much." As Shang Qinghua overflowed with snot and tears, clinging on for dear life, begging to pledge fealty to Mobei-Jun, wholly without warning, the demon collapsed. Shang Qinghua was still hugging his thighs, and when Mobei-Jun fell, he was almost squashed right under him. He hurriedly let go. He crouched there for a while in a daze until he suddenly came to his senses. Had Mobei-Jun come here already injured? No wonder his expression had been so ugly and his temper so high. And no wonder he'd been so easy to push over. Had Shang Qinghua accidentally poked out one of his wounds when his hand slipped? Sometimes the slip of the hand is advantageous. Oh my God, are you kidding me? Anyway, we're going to talk about this. Shang Qinghua cautiously moved over to examine him carefully. Just as expected, there was a thin wound the length of a finger on the back of Mobei-Jun's lower waist, roughly over his right kidney. A sharp corner of something gold protruded from inside the wound. He could vaguely make out that it was the petal-sharp edge of an intricate piece of handicraft that had been forged from gold threads. So coquettish and cultured. It was Huanhua Palace's Linghua dart, all right. This weapon was one of the nonsense details that Great Master Airplane had cooked up on the fly while writing. The body of the dart was light and thin and coated with a bit of anesthetic, so it was very difficult for its target to discover the object once it breached their body. If they moved too much, the dart would magnificently blossom, growing 6 sharp flower petals to slice up the victim's internal organs. Does this perhaps sound a bit familiar? Doesn't this device overlap with a certain demon realm organism? No problem. It's easy enough to justify. Just explain it away by saying that this Linghua dart was created by some Huanhua Palace senior who'd escaped from the demon realm by the skin of their teeth and then based the design on the strange organism called the ties that bind. In short, Don't make a fuss over this sort of tiny detail. Oh, so ties that bind, talking about the palace master. Oh my God, we're going to go back to this. Background narration complete. Let's jerk ourselves back over. Jerk ourselves, really? Back over to the main topic. That is to say, this pure-blooded demonic second Jin, who in the future would very likely beat Shang Qinghua to death with a single stroke, not only had his kidney been punctured through by the Huanhua Palace, but he was also very severely anesthetized. It seemed like Mobei-Jun had just killed his way out of a Huanhua Palace ambush. The demon race held their grudges for a long time, and the Mobei clan had held a long-standing animosity towards Huanhua Palace. That sect would suffer the greatest number of deaths and injuries at the ill-fated Immortal Alliance Conference, precisely because Mobei-Jun wished to retaliate against them. This event had connected seamlessly with airplane shooting towards the skies' master plan. Shang Qinghua muttered to himself back and forth, a mischievous cast to his face. He looked around on the ground for a while before finding a stone about half the size of a skull and hefted it up. It was quite heavy. 1, 2, 3. He got in position above Mobei-Jun's head, the demon's eyes still closed. The system offered neither warning hints nor prohibiting alerts. Shang Qinghua relaxed. There was no warning, which meant, in other words, go ahead and kill him. My king, ah, my king, this is the will of the heavens. Don't blame me. With a thoroughly insincere prayer, Shang Qinghua's hand rose, and the stone fell. And braked to a halt, right above the tip of Mobei-Jun's arguably perfect nose. To tell the truth, this Mobei-Jun character held an unusual significance to him. It could be said that Mobei-Jun was the type of man great master airplane had always dreamed of becoming. Strong, cool, doing as he pleased. Just like every kid had dreamed of becoming Ultraman. How could he just stand by and watch himself kill Ultraman with his own hands? Shang Qinghua bemoaned his dilemma for a while. After he finished, he had a perfectly shameless thought. It would be fine if he just didn't watch, right? So he turned his head and raised the stone up high. Nope, he still couldn't do it. Shang Qinghua chucked aside the cumbersome murder weapon with a plop. His eyes shone with excitement, and by now he almost completely was on top of Mobei-Jun. I can't. The more I look, the more I feel this face is just too damn mesmerizing. In truth, deep down, Bingei's fair and clean pretty boy type didn't really suit the taste of great master airplane flying towards the sky. He had only assigned this sort of configuration to the protagonist to meet his stallion hardware specifications. The art of growing stallions was grounded in science, and the research was clear. Women preferred men who looked cultured, pretty, and even a bit soft and feminine. Protagonists couldn't avoid getting roasted. It was fair to say that Bingei had a fan every 3 steps and a hater every 5, but Mobei-Jun wasn't the same. Supporting characters inevitably attracted a lot of love, and Mobei-Jun had practically never been hated on. This character had been created entirely according to the author's own tastes. And because Mobei-Jun was secretly favored by the author, he had embodied airplane shooting towards the sky's scholarly aesthetic for the ideal fellow man. Don't ask why Lo Binghei wasn't the embodiment of his ideal man. Lo Binghei's use had primarily been to fulfill his desire to be a badass and get revenge, as well as his desire for wanton, this section has been censored. Even this young Mobei-Jun, who hadn't yet grown into himself, was unconditionally in line with the 16 words that described the author's true aesthetic. Eyes deep as night, nose straight and high, full of heroic spirit, icily arrogant beyond compare. This was the beautiful man of his dreams! The stony murder weapon rose and lowered and rose. For the first time in his transmigrated life, Shang Qinghua was faced with a difficult life choice. Finally, he decided, time to get a room! What? Oh my God, so we just went through a lot. We just went through a lot in one page. Oh, he would go to an inn to get a room. No, to find somewhere to stay. At present, though, he was in a field of dead bodies. Shang Qinghua hesitated a bit, then tipped that load of Qi Jinping's heavy, useless nuisance right off the cart, the way he'd taken out the trash. He hauled Mobei-Jun onto it face down so as to conceal the face that made him lose control every time he looked at it. We're not even hiding the allegations. There's not... There is no way that you don't know how... Okay. Sure, Jan. For the time being, he couldn't return to Sangtong Mountain. No one there would realize anything was amiss too quickly. The trip was supposed to last 7 days, and only 2 had passed. To stand steadfast by this demonic young heir and protect him while he'd been weakened by a sneak attack. Oh, what a wonderful opportunity to garner some goodwill. Shen Qingqiu is like a fan is hitting himself in the face right now. While comforting himself with this justification, Shang Qinghua huffed and puffed as he pushed that large flatbed cart towards the city. To rent the room, Shang Qinghua spent the secret stash he'd been saving these last few years. At this point, he was only an average run-of-the-mill outer disciple, and he didn't have the authority to manage accounts or draw from the sect coffers. Renting a room already stretched the limits of his economic ability. So, as a matter of course, it was a single room. So, as a matter of course, there was only one bed. Who this bed belonged to was also a matter of course. Of course it was for himself. There was only one room! There was only one bed! Shut up! You're an author! You know! You know what you're doing, you son of a bitch! For a while, Shang Qinghua sprawled out in the bed like a dead starfish! After he'd finished stretching out his muscles and bones, he crawled up and hauled Mobei-Jun onto it. Oh! This was necessary! Mobei-Jun was already in a bad mood and quite the temper after being injured. If he awoke to find himself lying on the ground or scrunched into a chair, could Shang Qinghua expect to keep his life? There was no question that Mobei-Jun wouldn't stop to consider the truth of the situation before rewarding him with an icicle through the chest. They'd just passed by a medicine stand, and Shang Qinghua had bought a bit of such and such ointment. Although, given Demon's usually strong vitality, he could probably just toss him in the corner and ignore him. And no matter how large a hole had been poked into him, it would gradually close. However, since Shang Qinghua had decided to cling onto those thighs, he knew he had to discard all reservations and display his sincerity. Quick side note, the idea of Demon's holes being stretched and being able to close without any bother, and you're telling me that Shen Qingqiu knows all about monsters and demons, but probably knows this and still doesn't want to make Lo Binghe a bottom? I rest my case. I'm just saying. Masochist. Anyway, as a self-proclaimed frank and honest reprobate, Great Master Airplane shooting towards the sky looked down on hypocrites who kept up the aloof poser facade despite clearly wanting to cling to people's thighs. Well, that's real fancy. I know. I love how he's talking both about Shen Qingqiu and also about himself. He boldly scooped up a large lump of ointment and shoved it into the hole above Mobei-Jun's kidney until it was more or less closed, then flipped him over, arranging his hands palms together in a Sleeping Beauty pose. After spending some time admiring this perfect face, which he had modeled after his mind's eye ideal, he pillowed his head on his arms and fell asleep on the outer edge of the bed. The summer night was stiflingly hot. Even with the window open, not a wisp of cool breeze flowed in. After tossing and turning for half the night, Shang Qinghua had finally managed to doze off when someone suddenly shoved him to the ground with a kick to the rear. Shang Qinghua was nearly scared to death. Scrabbling, he fled beneath the table and turned his head in a panic. Mobei-Jun sat straight up onto the bed, eyes shining with blue light like an overcharged battery about to explode. Shang Qinghua had thought up his lines long ago. He beat his chest and stomped his feet, saying with a deep expression, "My king, you're finally awake." Mobei-Jun was unmoved, looking at him coldly. "Do you remember who I am?" Mobei-Jun didn't respond. Shang Qinghua felt not a bit of embarrassment. Delightedly entertaining the possibility of amnesia, he barreled onward. "We met on a little road just a moment ago. I said I would follow you for the rest of my life, my king, as close as—" Mobei-Jun cut him off. "Why were you hugging me just now?" "As a little padded jacket?" Shang Qinghua started. "What did you say? I did what just now?" "You were hugging me." A sudden realization. Thunder from a clear sky. Sleeping in this damn heat was like being baked in a furnace, and Mobei-Jun's body temperature just happened to be cold. In a muddled state of sleep, Shang Qinghua had subconsciously moved towards the cooler side of the bed, and the closer he got, the cooler and more comfortable he'd become. No wonder he had dreamed of a giant popsicle, which he'd happily wrapped his four limbs like an octopus as he licked and cried happy tears. Oh my God! Shang Qinghua carefully peeked at Mobei-Jun's face and neck. Seeing no unusual shine of moisture upon them, he couldn't resist letting out a thankful prayer. Your body was ice cold, he said cautiously. I was afraid you weren't going to make it, so I was holding you. The audacity, the gall, and the gumption. At this, Mobei-Jun scoffed. Fool. This is my natural state. The colder my body is, the better my condition. I'm not a human, for whom cold means the onset of death. Shang Qinghua carefully measured Mobei-Jun's every word and expression. Seeing him relax a bit, a smile soon spread across his face. Just when he was about to slither out from under the table like a snake crawling up the stick used to strike it, Mobei-Jun suddenly recovered his ice-cold demeanor. Go on. Try moving another inch. Shang Qinghua was instantly scared stiff. He pathetically clung to the table leg, curled into a ball under the table like a hamster. People in the Discord have been calling him a hamster. Now it makes sense. Oh, what do you want? Asked Mobei-Jun. I don't really want anything, Shang Qinghua said shamelessly. I just want to follow you for the rest of my life. Mobei-Jun acted as if he hadn't heard. You're an on-ding peak outer disciple. Shang Qinghua kept feeling that whenever anyone stressed these three words, on ding peak, they carried an undertone of prejudice. For fear that Mobei-Jun would deem him useless and do away with him forthwith, he stuck out his head. My king, listen to me. I'm young, so I have opportunities to rise in status. Get back. Shang Qinghua hurriedly retreated to safety. Satisfied with this distance, Mobei-Jun said, the assistance you lent me, was it for opportunities to rise in status? As proud and arrogant as expected. He hadn't used save, a verb that would have implied being the weaker party in the situation, but rather assist, which implied that he had merely been support. Shang Qinghua chuckled, playing dumb. If he said no, the credibility rating of his response would be less than 3%. But if he said yes, Mobei-Jun rather looked down upon such spineless reprobates. This was the reason Mobei-Jun hadn't thought twice about killing the original flavor Shang Qinghua, because he had never planned on letting him live in the first place. How could Shang Qinghua shamelessly admit that he had done it just to grind friendship XP? Fortunately, Mobei-Jun had already come to a conclusion, and he slapped the label of greedy for life, afraid of death, slippery bootlicker, sect sellout right onto Shang Qinghua. He didn't need him to respond before he let out a cold snort, and he lay down once more. Shang Qinghua waited for a long time, not moving another step. Had he received a concession for the time being, or had Mobei-Jun fainted again? In the end, Shang Qinghua didn't dare to rashly approach, and remained crouched under the table, making do for the rest of the night. After struggling with himself for half the night, as soon as he woke the next morning, Shang Qinghua officially began a busy day of being ordered left and right. By noon, Shang Qinghua had worked hard without complaint, running up and down the stairs more than 20 times and changing the water in the bathtub 7 or 8. This water was to help Mobei-Jun heal his wounds. Soaking in water was the best option for this ice-powered great lord, after all. But a perfectly good tub of warm water didn't last an hour before it turned into icy slush. Shang Qinghua huddled in the corner, chewing on some rations that he had with him while watching Mobei-Jun undress, nursing both extreme envy toward and extreme admiration for the figure and abs he had longed for in his dreams. Oh my God! Y'all, this is so hard to read with a straight face without freaking out. Oh my God! As he watched, he suddenly realized Mobei-Jun had stopped undressing and was staring at him, an unhappy look on his face. Shang Qinghua chewed a couple of times, hurriedly swallowed a few extra bites just in case Mobei-Jun suddenly demanded he hand over his rations. You're very fishy, Mobei-Jun said. Not fishy, Shang Qinghua said hurriedly. This one is sweet. He didn't have the chance to eat more than a couple bites before a few strips of black shadow hit him full in the face. So, Shang Qinghua couldn't stand around officially anymore, as he had to go wash his newly claimed master's clothes. Indeed, this young demonic heir had only brought one change of clothes, and now it was full of holes, blood, and sweat. How could he wear them any longer? Obviously, they had been sewn and mended and washed and dried. Low fantasy genre worlds doggedly adhered to these kinds of unromantic, dismal, and disgusting principles of realism. Shang Qinghua swore that if he ever had the opportunity to change back into great master airplane shooting towards the sky, his next book would be a high fantasy genre of the sort where wild plot bunnies ran rampant and science was fed to the dogs. Characters would leave clouds of garments and trim the moon into a belt, and all manual labor would be resolved with the twitch of a pinky finger. There would never again be a need for dismal existences like those of On Ding Peak's disciples. Shang Qinghua considerably patched the hole in Mobei-Jun's clothes that had once covered his kidney, wrung them dry, and hung them out up in the room. He felt he had made a very good show of himself that day. So that night, with the confidence of the ignorant, he thickened his face and crawled toward the bed. Before he got close, history repeated itself and he was kicked again off. He sat on the ground, tears in his eyes and his voice trembling. "Oh, my king, you won't let me on the bed? What if during the night you get cold and thirsty, hungry, or want to turn over? What then?" Mobei-Jun lifted an eyebrow. Easily seen to. So, he ordered Shang Qinghua to find the length of a cord. One end was tied to his finger, and the other was tied to Shang Qinghua's finger? In your dreams. It was tied to his neck! Nothing more. Well, neck is better than what I thought we were going to do, but Shang Qinghua, oh, you guys are fine. Shang Qinghua lay on the ground like a corpse. The fuck, he thought to himself. Dogs have it better than I do. The only comforting thought that he could scrounge up was that at least Mobei-Jun wasn't some sort of pervert. The other end of the cord could have been tied to his... Yes! I thought that's where we were going! That treatment would have truly been inhumane. I thought we were going to tie it to the penis. I'm glad the book went there with us. Yep. Shang Qinghua spent only 4 days, suffering such hardship. But he honestly felt the days dragging by like years. Even his nights were an unceasing nightmare. On the final day, in the middle of the night, Shang Qinghua was sound asleep as he once again dreamed. I wonder if Mobei-Jun can enter his dream realm? This time, he dreamed he was still in the real world, crying and weeping at the computer screen. Beside him was a fiendishly large man holding a thorny cucumber, shaped rather like a hairy lower leg. He was fiercely thrashing airplane shooting towards the sky's face, and as he thrashed, he roared, "Everything you write is unhinged trash!" Airplane shooting towards the sky dodged the cucumber like his life depended on it as he strove to explain himself. "It's been so long since I've updated. Cucumber bro, don't be like this!" "Well, then hurry up and update!" With this, peerless cucumber tied a corded loop around his neck. Submerged and in great suffering, Shang Qinghua fought to wake up only to find the cord still tightening around his neck. Following it with his gaze, he found Mobei-Jun lying on the floor, mechanically pulling on the cord tied to his hand. "My king, what do you require?" Shang Qinghua asked lifelessly. Only after asking a couple more times did he discover that Mobei-Jun wasn't tormenting him on purpose. He was profoundly passed out and was merely tossing and turning in extreme discomfort while unconsciously yanking on the thing in his hand to try to find relief. As the unfortunate soul around whose neck the other end of the cord was tied, Shang Qinghua's eyeballs were nearly squeezed out of his head under the force of the pulls. Mobei-Jun creased his brow, restlessly flipping back and forth. Shang Qinghua quietly tiptoed up to the bedside. When he saw the shallow beads of sweat seeping from Mobei-Jun's smooth forehead, and felt the faint heat radiating from his clothes, he understood. The wound on Mobei-Jun's back looked just like a little cut, not anything alarming, but in truth, the situation was a bit serious. It was just that he was stubbornly trying to ride it out and refused to admit it. In addition, it went without saying that the ice demons hated hot weather more than anything. It was the height of summer, and the wound was possibly becoming something similar to inflamed or even beginning to fester. His kidney was healing so slowly. Did he need some sort of medicine to strengthen it a bit? The Mobei clan needed the cold. If they didn't have cold temperatures, they just had to make their own. Shang Qinghua muttered his sleeping posture is really fucking bad, then accepted his fate and went out. Unhindered by the annoyance he earned for knocking on doors in the middle of the night, he asked for 2 leaf fans, a basin of water, and 2 clean towels. He returned and wiped Mobei-Jun down and then placed a wet towel on his forehead. Taking up one leaf fan with his left hand and the other in his right, he fanned like his life depended on it. He fanned and yawned incessantly, fanning until his eyes were bleary. Half dreaming and half awake, he seemed to see Mobei-Jun's eyes open. Icy blue pupils were bright and cold under the moonlight, like a pair of magnificent and eerie chrysoberyls. This scene was so profoundly frightening. Shang Qinghua shuddered and opened his eyes wide to take a better look, but Mobei-Jun's were clearly shut tight. Once Shang Qinghua awakened, he realized there was a major problem. During the night, he'd become dizzy from the heat, and as he waved and waved those leaf fans, he had managed to topple over on the bed and fallen asleep. Too close! Too close! Thankfully, Mobei-Jun was still asleep. If he had woken, he might as well have kicked Shang Qinghua's brains clear out of his head. Shang Qinghua hurriedly jumped off the bed and lay down in the corner of territory he had claimed for himself on the floor by the headboard. After a while, the bed frame began to creak lightly, and Mobei-Jun finally sat up. Shang Qinghua hissed to himself. That had been too close. If he had woken up a little bit later, he would have turned into a blood splatter on the spot. The next day, having obtained King Mobei's gracious permission, Shang Qinghua was finally able to see the light again, and he went out on the street for a stroll. Well, actually, he had clung to Mobei-Jun's thighs and wailed, "My king, I'm out of rations! My cultivation level isn't so high that I can eat when I want and abstain when I don't think that you can. If you don't let me go out to buy food, I'll starve to death and my corpse will stink up your room." He bought a bowl of thin congee to drink from a shop on the street corner. The congee was as clear as water. When he looked down and glimpsed his own reflection, he beheld a chrysanthemum battered by the rain. A trampled man, wan and sallow. And just as Shang Qinghua was wallowing in his wretched misery, he suddenly heard someone call him Shidi from behind. He turned to see some 5 young men exuding immortal auras, their sleeves and hems fluttering in a breeze as if they shouldered long swords, and walked solemnly towards him. His comrades from Sangzhong Mountain sect. Right, 7 days had passed, so they'd organized a group to come find him. Shang Qinghua was moved to tears. Reaching out a trembling hand, he called, "Oh, Shizhong! Oh, Wei Shizhong!" A reserved smile graced the face of the leading youth. 2 swords hung at his waist, one long and one short, and his sleeves billowed as if filled with a cool breeze. It was Wanjiang Peak's Wei Qingwei. When he saw Shang Qinghua rush out to greet him, he raised his hand to meet him, moved. "Oh, ex-Shidi, what happened to you? How have you so completely transformed as to reach such a state in a few days since we last met? You don't even look human." Shang Qinghua choked down a hot wave of tears and then awkwardly said, "Well, it's probably because I'm not ex-Shizhong." Sure, he had become a bit skinnier because he wasn't eating well. But what was with that "don't even look human" remark? Moreover, Shang Qinghua had been to Wanjiang Peak's sword trials terrace at least 3 times to polish swords for Wei Shizhong and his buddies, and every time they'd wanted him to sweep their floors while he was at it, and make them food, and also to feed their pangolians. Well, how could they have already forgotten his face? "Can't you see I'm making a joke?" Wei Qingwei asked. "What, is it not funny?" "Oh, right, Shang Shidi. Why are you all alone? Where are the others? Why did you delay your return? Did something happen?" Wei Shizhong, you really need to work on your jokes. As for the others... This attack had been too sudden, and Shang Qinghua couldn't make up a seamless alibi on such a short notice. So he just swayed a couple of times, his face deathly pale, and then he fell to the ground with a plop. As he looked like he couldn't hold up much longer, no one would be suspicious if he pretended to faint. While he was playing dead, he felt Wei Qingwei crouch down and poke his face a couple of times. The others said, "Shizhong, he fainted. What should we do?" "What else can we do?" Wei Qingwei asked, still poking. "Let's drag him back first and figure it out after." At Chongqing Peak, rows and rows of dead bodies were arranged outside the main hall. Other than Shang Qinghua, every Anding Peak outer disciple who had been sent to retrieve goods that day lay in repose, down to the last. Shang Qinghua knelt in front of the bodies, tears falling to the ground. There was no way around it. It was hard to get by in this cultivation world. Someone like him, with mediocre innate ability, really couldn't make it without well-developed tear glands. If he hadn't had those, he wouldn't be able to put on this act of a sorrow so heartbroken it had stilled the tongue in front of the Peak Lords. Oh my God, you rat bastard! After the Peak Lords finished questioning him, they went into the hall to discuss, the atmosphere serious and solemn. Shang Qinghua suddenly heard the tinkling of sword tassel pendants, and a youth wearing Qi Peak's uniform slowly approached him. This youth had snowy, fair skin, slender brows, and eyes, pale lips, and a somewhat harsh appearance. His black hair was neatly tied behind his head with a light green ribbon, and a sword was held in his arms. It was precisely that inauspicious star, that heartless ghoul, that certain, eclectic and eccentric fellow from Qi Peak, proud immortal demon ways, scum villain par excellence of the next generation, Shen Qinqiu. Once Shen Qinqiu finished examining the bodies, he asked carelessly, "Did that demon ask you to bring back some message or perhaps some object?" Shang Qinghua started, shocked that Shen Qinqiu had actually chosen to grace him with such unsolicited words. No. Shen Qinqiu had a habit of raising his chin, so he was often looking down his nose at others. Every time they spoke, Shang Qinghua felt like Shen Qinqiu was sneering at him. Granted, the sneering didn't really matter. He was pretty much used to it. "Then that's strange," Shen Qinqiu said, his expression like a smile yet not. "All the others died. If you don't have some message to bring us, why would you, of all people, be the only survivor?" Shang Qinghua blinked his eyes, tears once again streaming down his face. This time, Shen Qinqiu smiled for real. "Exactly, Shang Shidi. Exactly how did you escape unscathed to return to Sangzhong Mountain?" Shang Qinghua absolutely could not afford to give a careless response to this question. The Shen Qinqiu of this world functioned in accordance with his original settings. He wasn't like those low IQ, paper-thin cannon fodder villains, and he was under no circumstances easy to deceive. If Shang Qinghua blew his cover and got reported, his clandestine second career would be over before it even began. So he played dumb and laughed awkwardly for 30 seconds. Suddenly, the light bulb in his head lit up and he instantly began to stammer. It might be because he hadn't for a second hesitated to kneel? Because he'd yelled "my king" with volume and sincerity? Because he'd brazenly abandoned all dignity? Shen Qinqiu waited patiently, and for his trouble, received a fit of gut-wrenching coughs from his target. Shang Qinghua coughed until tears poured from his eyes. Shen Qinqiu backed up a step, a shade of disgust on his face. "Everyone has a weakness. Just you see who I'll summon to deal with you!" Sure enough, after 5 seconds of this, Yu Qingyuan's voice came from behind them. "Qingqiu, Shidi, in the first place, the behavior of the demon race has no logic to speak of. And moreover, Shang Shidi only just managed to escape a terrible catastrophe. Even if there are questions to ask, why not wait until he recovers a bit?" "And he appears! The god-tier summon, do-gooder, future sect leader, Yu Qingyuan has entered the battlefield!" Shang Qinghua silently began to count. Shen Qinqiu raised his hand. Fine, since you find my words so unpleasant to hear, I won't say any more of them. Yu Shizhong, as you please. 1 hit. Our Shidi from Anti Peak descended the mountain to help handle affairs from Qi Peak. Why must Shidi be so reluctant to grant him even a bit of sympathy? Asked Yu Qingyang. "Shang Shidi, why is your coughing growing worse? Do you need me to call Shan Sao's Peak's Mu Shidi to take a look at you?" 2 hits. Shang Qinghua shook his head at Yu Qingyang, shedding tears of gratitude. He continued to count. Shen Qinqiu sneered. "The 12 peaks all oversee their own duties, and each has their own expertise. Anding Peak is supposed to do this sort of thing in the first place. Why must Yu Shizhong speak like they've been wronged in some way? As if Anding Peak is the only one with things to do in Sangzhong Mountain. Besides, don't tell me Shizhong believes. They really do work hard without complaint. You think they don't curse us behind our backs every day?" 3 hits. Yu Qingyang's expression was unerringly patient from beginning to end. He was just about to respond when Shen Qinqiu cut him off. "Stop! Thank you for your instruction, Yu Shizhong. Shen Qinqiu will continue to listen in the future. I'm going." 4 hits! Combo! Shang Qinghua knew in his bones that if these two struck up a conversation, they would inevitably part on bad terms by the 5th exchange. After Shen Qinqiu walked away, carrying Zhuya, Yu Qingyong finally turned around. Shang Shidi, you've suffered a scare. No, Shang Qinghua said hurriedly. Compared to the exhaustion and exploitation he'd suffered these past few days, a little scare was nothing at all. But all things had a silver lining. After this incident, perhaps because the old Onding Peak Lord wanted to console Shang Qinghua or whatever, he was promoted to an official inner disciple. Shang Qinghua sang happily the whole way, returning to the large common dormitory to pack up his things before arriving at Onding Peak's highest level dormitory, the Leisure House, to report for duty. That's right. You didn't read that wrong. On Onding Peak, the disciples who ran around here and they're all their lives exploited like servant girls lived in a dormitory called the Leisure House. Leisure my ass! Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky swore he hadn't come up with this name with any satirical intent, but nowadays every time he saw those words he was overcome by an incredible malice of this world. Shang Qinghua found his own small room. Exhausted in both body and soul, he preserved and laid out his bedding, then turned around to pour himself a cup of water. But as soon as he turned back, there was another person lying on his bed. In an utter cliché, the new teacup he had just received from the steward's office dropped from his right hand onto his foot, his legs softened, nearly sending him falling onto his rear. My king! Mobei-Jun turned to face him. He was expressionless, but his voice was cold as ice. You'll follow me for the rest of your life, Shang Qinghua was going to cry in fear. Mobei-Jun even followed him back here. He never thought, no, strictly speaking, it wasn't like he'd never thought about it. After all, Mobei-Jun had a special ability. Mysterious phantom, come and go like a shadow. Shang Qinghua had thought it up in the first place so that Mobei-Jun could help Binghe slaughter and pillage, and so he could move under the cover of darkness anywhere and at any time. Shang Qinghua proceeded to babble nonstop. Oh, my king, allow me to explain. That day, as soon as I went outside, I just wanted to drink some kanji and come back. But who could have known that fate was messing with me? So I ran into a familiar Shizhong, and I was afraid he'd ask too many questions, and I'd let something slip. So he'd take me on people, take people to look at you, my king, and pick a fight with you, which wouldn't have been good. In addition, your injuries weren't causing you serious trouble anymore. So I thought, well, though from different angles and decided for my own mission, I had to endure disgrace and follow them back here. And from where I saw an opportunity, I would. The hand of Mobei-Jun was using the prop of his temple seemed to have gotten tired, and he switched to the other. They told you to return, and you just followed them back? What else could I have done? Shang Qinghua asked, aggrieved. Refused to submit on pain of death? Show my hand and fight? That wouldn't do. Aside from the fact that I can't defeat them, the important thing is that I still have to be an undercover agent for you, my king. So how could I ruin my reputation with Sangzhong Mountain now? In the midst of this wildfire burst of enthusiasm, he struck while the iron was hot. A report for my king. I have already become an inner disciple. Doesn't that demonstrate ample drive to succeed? Doesn't that show you that I have a lot of potential? Kissing up. He was kissing up as hard as he could. However, no matter how much it looked like he was kissing up on the surface, Great Master Airplane Shooting Towards the Sky, inner heart was as placid as a spring day. He had always firmly believed that 1, there's gold when a real man kneels. Yes, in that order. A corruption of the saying, below a man's knees there is gold, meaning that a man's subordination is as rare and valuable as gold. Shang Qinghua's alteration implies profit in subordination. 2, a real man doesn't cry for no reason. But if he doesn't cry at times like this, then when will he? These 2 major life principles told him that in times of great need, kissing up a bit wasn't anything remarkable. If you thought about it another way, Mobei-Jun was a character that Shang Qinghua had created. And as the author, Mobei-Jun was like his own son. For a father to concede a bit to his own son, to show a bit of love, well, that clearly couldn't be called anything strange. What was that saying? Oh my God, we are going to talk about this. Oh my God. Oh, you kidding me? Shit. Children are the debts parents owe from their previous lives. A reference to the superstition that if you are indebted to someone in this life or a prior one, they may be reincarnated as your child to collect on what you owe. Ping, pang, pang, pang. Shang Qinghua suffered another good beating, and there... Oh! Ping, ping, pang, pang! Shang Qinghua suffered another good beating, and thereafter hugged his knees, crouching in his chair, where he ineptly fooled himself into taking this as a Pyrrhic victory. After stretching his muscles and joints, Mobei-Jun lay back down on the bed, where he sprawled out and turned his back to Shang Qinghua. He spoke in a sleepy voice, neither loud nor soft. We'll continue tomorrow. Shang Qinghua was struck silent. Continue? He had an urge to scream and shout, to call down the entirety of Sangzhong Mountain, to accompany him to his death. Oh my God! Oh! Oh! Oh my God. Y'all, is it getting hot in here or what? Ah! Oh my God, why? Why do I love this so much? Oh my God. Look. Look, Shen Qingqiu, our boy Shen Yan in Shen Qingqiu's body. Amazing. 10 out of 10. Our peerless cucumber. How could we top him? Unless you're Lo Bing-A. But he's so great. But I have fallen in love with Shang Qinghua and his character. Not in love. Shang Qinghua is not my type. But I have fallen in love with his character and just how shameless and hilarious he is. Oh my God. Like he the only picture we get for this chapter set, which, oh my God, it's adorable, is him with the rope around his neck, fanning Mobei-Jun as he's potentially dying because he's just that much of a worm. Would you love me even if I was a worm? Well, maybe Mobei-Jun would actually. So there are actually a lot of things to talk about with this and some comparisons and similarities and dissimilarities to talk about with our two main pairings here, because I am kind of like, I am all on board with Mobei-Jun and Shang Qinghua. I am 1,000 times on board with them because their dynamic is what I love, and I'm here for this, and we're going to talk about it. But oh my God, just the way the airplane shooting towards the sky was like, I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, he's just the perfect human being. There are so many comparisons, so many parallels, but so many differences. And there's so much tying to the rest of the story. Oh my God. So we just need to dive into this, right? Just dive into this. If you're curious, obviously next week, chapter 97 is at the very least going to be about Shang Qinghua and Mobei-Jun. I'm going to bet that chapter 98 is as well. And I'm going to bet chapter 99 is too. I'm going to bet that it is. Because then after that, we would go back to the whole dream thing and back to Shen Qingqiu and Lo Bing-A. Is it bad that they can sit over there for now because I'm really loving this? So it looks like we'll get that, and then we'll go back to those two at the end. So next week's going to be chapter 97, 98. So we at least get one more, I'm assuming 2 chapters of these two. And then, yes, oh my God, I can't believe we have 2 more weeks of this story. It doesn't feel like the end at all. It doesn't feel like it's ending. It really doesn't. And I could read a whole book of Shang Qinghua. I need my midnight. This is the midnight sun of Scum Villain. This is Scum Villain from Shang Qinghua's perspective. And it's so freaking good. It's so good. Oh my God. I am sweating, by the way. This is drenched. Just drenched. Just so you know, because I was just sweating. I was so excited. Oh my God. So we're gonna talk about it here in a little bit, but So again, we have a lot of parallels between our two main characters here, where Shang Qinghua, he knew that he was going to be killed in the OG timeline by Mobei-Jun. So his solution is, I am going to hug the main protagonist's thighs and beg for my life. Essentially, I will note that Shen Qingqiu had kind of contemplated that. Shen Qingqiu was like, look, in order for me to survive, he said he was willing. He was willing to hug the thighs of the main protagonist. Shen Qingqiu was willing, and Shang Qinghua went ahead and did it. Shen Yan had like a sliver of dignity left, and Shang Qinghua was like, dignity? What's that? And threw it out the window immediately. But I will say this. There is something refreshing about Shang Qinghua's blatant play to the audience and being like, I mean, oh, who knew it was a hotel room with one bed? I couldn't have possibly have scraped by with anything more. Like we, the audience, don't know. Like Shang Qinghua knows that we know. but is gonna play it off like we don't know because they have no shame, but they're not gonna come out and say it, right? Whereas there is something about Shen Qinqiu where he is kind of like in this weird state. He's such in denial that it's created a state of just obliviousness, and Shang Qinghua is not that way. So we'll talk about this, but also worth noting is with Mobei-Jun. Mobei-Jun kind of reminds me a little bit of, he's similar to the OG Lo Binghe, just a little bit, which kind of goes in line with, he is kind of like, Shang Qinghua described him as what his ideal was. But again, we talked last episode about how Shang Qinghua was lamenting that he was trying to follow trends and go with the stallion novel tropes, and Mobei-Jun's ultra mask, like bare body daddy form was not what he thought the ladies would want to read about and not what the guys would think is cool. So he altered instead to go with the OG Lo Binghe as being the stallion trope. But not Shang Qinghua's ideal. Shang Qinghua wants a bear. Essentially, and that's not what Shen Qinqiu wants. So they want very different types, which is good to note. So good for them. But yeah, one thing I do like about Mobei-Jun is he kind of reminds me of the original Lo Binghe in this kind of stoicness and just kind of like, oh, I don't understand why you're like that. Except he grew up as a demon, so there's not that sense of betrayal and overarching abuse that Lo Binghe has suffered. Mobei-Jun's just always kind of been like, yeah, this is just the way it is. And it's kind of interesting. You have like on the spectrum, you have Lo Binghe in the middle. And then on the spectrum of humanity, you have like Liu Qingge over here being like someone similar to Lo Binghe but different, and Gong Yizhao, someone similar to Lo Binghe but different on humanity's spectrum side. And then you go over here and there's like Mobei-Jun, who's kind of like Lo Binghe but on the demon spectrum. So it's kind of cool to see Lo Binghe as the little equilibrium there in the middle. It's neat to see that kind of explained in this story a little bit more because I wasn't expecting it, especially with Mobei-Jun. I really like Mobei-Jun's character. I really do. I am a sucker for Mobei-Jun is not whiny. He's not a brat. He's not needy. No, Shang Qinghua is the needy one. No, Mobei-Jun's just kind of like, okay, I guess we'll go with this. But he has like this tsundere vibe to him, and I'm like, give me some more crumbs of that. Give me some more crumbs of that. But yeah, so Mobei-Jun's pissed, and we find out that he's mad because he was actually injured. And he was trying to like get out of the situation. He didn't want to admit that he was injured. All this other stuff's going on. And then, I mean, the fact that he killed the other disciples without question, I mean, it's similar to Lo Binghe, a little bit, except Lo Binghe in the Scum villain that we know is more of like a Black Lotus. He's a little bit more of a lamb that he's not outright killing people, but Mobei-Jun is full on demon. So different story. And again, Shang Qinghua clings to the thighs and is like, I would be very useful. So interesting to note is that Shang Qinghua, his description of what he can do in this world is very much the gender normative actions that a wife would do, like fold clothes and wash them and carry tea and serve you dinner and make you food. And then he's like, oh no, wait, actually I'm a spy. Yeah, spy. I wouldn't do housewife duties for you. But that's like what he leads off with. And then he alters it because he's like, oh shit, no, I don't want to come across like that. So he's like, oh yeah, I'll spy and pass on intelligence. Quite so. Whereas in the other regard, you have Shen Qinqiu, who very much was kind of like against those tropes and kind of passed them on. And he kind of passed them on to Lo Binghe. So you can make like a Venn diagram where you have Shen Qinqiu and Shang Qinghua and Mobei-Jun and Lo Binghe, and they all kind of overlap in different ways. But Shang Qinghua kind of like relegates to the duties that Lo Binghe did in the new Scum villain. And meanwhile, Shen Qinqiu and Mobei-Jun were kind of like, we're not going to do that. And that's kind of, it's interesting to see. You have Shen Qinqiu and Shang Qinghua being so similar, but then you have Shang Qinghua kind of being similar to Lo Binghe over here. and Shen Qinqiu having an odd commonality with Mobei-Jun. So it's like, I wasn't expecting that. It's really neat. But in any case, Mobei-Jun's just kind of like laughs and mocks on Ding Peak, and Shang Qinghua like, hey, that's the only place I got to go to. Please don't mock it. So then he collapses. And the scene where Shang Qinghua is contemplating what to do with the rock is amazing. Now, I want to talk about the Linghua dart that's with Huanghua Palace. Now we get all the connections of why Mobei-Jun is so adamant against Huanghua Palace and how that all tackles on in the original story. We get that. And so then we get connection to, oddly enough, is it connections to the original Palace Master? Is it connections to them? And the idea that they were like the ties that bind, the fact that the dart is designed based on the route that ends up killing the Palace Master is an amazing coincidence. So what? That part was wild to me. I was like, are you kidding me? That's insane. So anyway, there we go. It's basically stabbed him and it was going to tear out his kidney from inside. And Shang Qinghua was like, well, this is great. Mobei-Jun's going to die. So I won't have to die in this story. He'll kill himself. End of days. We're all good. And he's like, I'll just throw this rock on his head and then we'll just go ahead and kill him. And then he can't do it. I love that Shang Qinghua tries so many times, but he can't kill him. Now, his justification. Because you know what? What's kind of crazy is, again, we talk about opposites. Shang Qinghua was given the opportunity. He had the opportunity to actually kill Mobei-Jun. But he could not do it. He couldn't do it. He had the opportunity to do it. I thought whenever he first went to throw the rock, I thought the system stopped him. I thought the system was going to stop him and we were going to find out that Mobei-Jun couldn't be killed. But then in the back of my head, I was thinking, no, the story clearly said that the only person that you can't kill is Lo Binghe because he's the protagonist. So Shang Qinghua could have killed him and the system would not have stopped him. But he couldn't do it because he said that this was the type of man the airplane shooting towards the sky dreamed of becoming. Strong, cool, doing as he pleased. Like Ultraman, like a hero. He's someone that Shang Qinghua idolized. So how could he kill him? Because it's like killing your perfect creation. Meanwhile, you have Shen Qinqiu, who doesn't want to kill Lo Binghe. And cannot because the system won't let him even if he wanted to. So I like that you had Shen Qinqiu not wanting to kill Lo Binghe and the system saying no anyway. And then you had Shang Qinghua who could have killed Mobei-Jun and the system would have let him but decided not to. And they're both like significant in their own ways, which is so interesting to me. But I like that Shang Qinghua, it almost seems like he's justifying to the audience being like, well, I couldn't kill him because, you know, he's like Ultraman. Like, what kid want to kill their hero when they're a kid? And he's like, no, I could. He's perfect. I made him perfect. Why would I want to kill my own perfect creation? Okay. All right. He's like, and then also, the more I look at his face, it's too damn mesmerizing. And so then he talks about his type and that he actually preferred that Lo Binghe was not his type of person, which also I'm like, Shang Qinghua in that moment where he's like, well, you know, I don't really care for the pretty boy type. And I'm like, weren't you like weren't you like trying to like slander Shen Qinqiu for his sexuality earlier in this? Have you always been very open about your sexuality? Have you? And now, because it seems like Shang Qinghua is like, well, of course, I don't prefer men like Lo Binghe. That's not my type. And I'm like he just casually throws these lines like we should know it. And we're like, wait, what? So I wondered if the censorship where it said this section has been censored was censored because it changes from the OG version to the new version with Shen Qingqiu's presence. Maybe, or if it's just talking about his desire for wanton women, or they just don't want to outright say it because it ends up changing. Who knows? But he's like, this was the beautiful man of his dreams. the young Mobei-Jun who hadn't even grown into himself. Eyes deep as night, nose straight and high, full of heroic spirit, icily arrogant beyond compare. I mean, that describes Lo Binghe in a little ways, but differently, I guess, I suppose, if we're going to say that. But yeah, Shang Qinghua is very openly describing his ideal man. Meanwhile, Shen Qingqiu does describe how beautiful Lo Binghe is, but does it in a somewhat platonic way where he's just like, oh, well, no, he's just Shang Qinghua designed him as the most handsome of all characters, as any stallion novel would have. Whereas Shang Qinghua, his response in this one page is basically like him saying, like, yeah, this guy's the man of my dreams. Why would I kill him? Let's go get a room. But he acts like, as the narrator, he acts like it's just the most nonchalant thing you've ever heard. And I'm like, after all the shit you gave Shen Qingqiu, and you're just like, oh yeah, just get a room, of course. I love the way that this is phrased, where he's just like, I love when we get there, and he's like, okay, at present, there's just a field of dead bodies, and Shang Qinghua is like, I like that he just like tiptoed past them all and threw Mobei-Jun on the cart and like pushed it into town, ignoring the dead bodies. It felt very much, it reminded me a lot of, I'm watching the series Dungeon Meshi at the time. Right now I'm watching Delicious in Dungeon, which is so fun. And part of the dark humor is that whenever stuff is going on that the characters aren't involved in, they're just kind of like dee and like skittle on past. That is exactly what this felt like with Shang Qinghua. He's like, well, they're dead characters in the book. Gotta move on. And that kind of seems similar to Shen Qingqiu, where he was viewing the characters as book characters. That's good to note, is that both of them at the start viewed them as characters in a book. You had Shen Qingqiu doing it at the very beginning of Scum Villain, and here you have Shang Qinghua in ignoring the people that Mobei-Jun killed. He's just like, well, they're book characters and they're fodder. Oh, well. And then he treats Mobei-Jun kind of like the character in the book. He's like, but I wrote this perfect character. I can't possibly kill him. He's my creation. And then, you know, he even later on uses Yu Qingyan being like, oh, I know how to pitch Shen Qingqiu and Yu Qingyan together because I wrote them that way. Like, he very much is acting like Shen Qingqiu did at the start of the book and just viewing them as characters. So then he gets there, pushing him on the cart. And my favorite thing is how MXTX sets this up, being like, well, at this point, you know, I just have this average run-of-the-mill job, so I had to rent a room that was, you know, at my economic limits. And then I love, so as a matter of course, a single room. As a matter of course, only one bed. As a matter of course, it was for himself. I was like, the only one bed, and then there was one bed trope being used in this moment by a character who is in real life an author is not lost on me. I'm like, bitch, you know exactly what you're doing. Oh my God, it was amazing. And so, yeah, I like the fact that he's like, well, I'll just put Mobei-Jun here on the bed, you know, so he doesn't wake up and get mad at me. And then I'll just, you know, sit here on the edge of the bed and it's fine. And he just scoops the lump of ointment and puts it on there to heal his kidney and all that. But I love that when Mobei-Jun wakes up, Mobei-Jun sees that Shang Qinghua was hugging him. And he kind of like quietly asks, he's like, well, you were hugging me. And Shang Qinghua was like, oh, well, your body was ice cold and I was afraid you weren't going to make it. So I was holding on to you, without subconsciously realizing that he was. So in that moment for me, Mobei-Jun, very similarly to what Lo Binghe does in that moment, is that act of affection and love makes them slowly turn a new leaf, and it is also simultaneously the seed of their relationship. Just like Shen Qingqiu using the leaves to chase the bullies away and doing the whole thing in the cart with Lo Binghe, this one moment of Shang Qinghua giving him a hug was like the one act that he was like, but why? And that planted the seed that eventually sprouts between these two characters. I'm all here for it. So yeah. So I love that Shang Qinghua is just like this little hamster. I love that he like curls into a ball under the table and he's like, okay, please, sir. I don't know. I know that Shang Qinghua is a sniveling little hamster and he's kind of like a little pathetic worm, but I kind of love it about him. It feels so right for his character to be that way. And he's the author of the story that now was so arrogant when he was alive and now has to deal with the repercussions of his writing. It's just so well done. I'm like, MXTX, slay me. I love this. And so he tries to convince Mobei-Jun that he's like, oh, well, as you know, I will be able to be a good spy for you and assist you. And I like that he even tries to, he plays the game because like Mobei-Jun's too proud to admit that Shang Qinghua saved his life. So he plays the game. He's like, okay, you say assist. Fine, we'll do assist. It'll be great. And then, but in any case, Mobei-Jun just kind of shrugs it off and says, fine, I'm not going to kill you. You're kind of pathetic, but you did save my life and you're not pushing it. So sure. So then Shang Qinghua, I like that before, before we go see there's so much that happened in this chapter set. But in this one chapter, there's so much that happened in this one chapter. Before he meets his disciples again, they have, Mobei-Jun puts him to work, bringing water to come and heat the bath up again. And Shang Qinghua, the audacity of this man, the audacity of him as the narrator. He's like, oh, well, I was bringing the water back and forth. I was sewing his clothes up. I was patching all his stuff up. So, what else was I to do but stare at him as he undresses and gets in the bath over and over again? What was I supposed to do? The gall, the gumption. And he's just like, I just had to stare at his abs. I'm like, do you realize you're gay? Do you realize it? Do you know? Do you realize? Because I think he does. And I think he's just trying to pull the wool over our eyes and act nonchalant as the narrator so that we won't question it and just be like, well, of course, why wouldn't you? Shen Qingqiu, to his credit, I do think was in such a state of denial that it drove him to be oblivious. But Shang Qinghua, it is so shameless. But he's so shameless that you don't even question it. You're just like, well, of course he's like this. And you're like, wait, what? When did we announce this? Oh my God. I love it. 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 So I also love the idea that he's like, if he ever had the opportunity to go back, he would make it a genre, which I'm assuming is another genre, where he's like, I could just do whatever I wanted to and nobody would care with the plot and everything. So in any case, I love the idea that the rope, because at first when he's like, you had one tied to Mobei-Jun's finger, the string, and I felt like it was the red string of fate. And I was like, oh, look, their little fingers are going to be tied together. Isn't that cute? It's like a red string of fate between them. And then when Shang Qinghua was like, no, it wasn't my finger, I was like, is it his dick? And the book said that too. The book thought it was too. And then he's like, nope, it was my neck. It's such dark humor, but it's so funny. I love it. And then as Mobei-Jun is tossing and turning, Shang Qinghua is like, well, what do I do about this? This is ridiculous. And so he gets towards the bed and then ends up just like sitting beside it. And he ends up getting the fan and the bamboo fan and the wet wash rag. And here's the thing. He found out that Mobei-Jun was dying. And he could have, if he wanted to get rid of Mobei-Jun and live, since he was so concerned about such things, he could have just let Mobei-Jun's wound fester and die. But he tries to save him, regardless. You could say it's because it's his creation and he feels that way, or you could say it's because he believes that Mobei-Jun needs to be saved. Because he has affection for him. Regardless, it's crazy. Like, he just decides, I'm going to save him. And then works with the banana leaves and everything to get him the wet wash rag and fan him until he eventually falls asleep on top of him. And then I love MXTX's writing in this whole chapter was so good, where she wrote of Shang Qinghua just scrambling off the bed being like, oh my God, I don't want him to know that I was close to him. This is my jam. This is my jam. I love Shen Qingqiu and Lo Binghei's relationship in the sense that it's very unconventional and it's fresh and new. But this, the tried and true kind of wormy character that falls for the big, powerful, stoic character. And he learns about himself while simultaneously melting the heart of the big guy. it gets me. It gets me, and I'm here for it. So I love a slimy kind of diva character that falls in love with a stoic, understated character, and they slowly melt the ice around each other until they can swim in it. I love it. It's great, and that's exactly what their relationship is like. It's wonderful. So then his disciples show up, and of course, because Shang Qinghua is a worm. He just goes back. He's like, yep, bye. Gonna leave him now. We're good. He's got salve. I fanned him. I put a wet wash rag on his head. He'll probably live. But now I have a way to get out. So he goes back. And I feel like I should know who Wei Shizhong is. Wei Qingwei. I feel like I should know who he is. I feel like I should. He is in what? Which one was he? Because he... Okay. I feel like... I don't know exactly when he first shows up. I don't know exactly... I can't decide where he's shown up at before. But... I don't want to look it up because it could be spoilers. I feel like we've seen him before, so you all will probably tell me in the comments if we have or not. And if we haven't, then we'll see him before. But I feel like I've seen him before. Have I not? He seems familiar. He feels like he's connected to Shen Qingqiu, but I can't quite remember where. I'm sure you all will tell me at some point, so it'll be fine. But yeah. So in any case, he's there. And then the original Shen Qingqiu showing up is wild. The original Shen Qingqiu. But before that, we're gonna go back a step before that here in a second. But yeah, the original Shen Qingqiu showing up and just being the most diva and slimy is so good. Just being like, why did you come back? What was this? Like, you can just feel it. I love how MXTX writes Shen Qingqiu, the OG one, because he's obviously, like, you can see the clear-cut difference between him and Shen Yan. Just in the way that MXTX writes their dialogue. Just in the way, because the stuff that Shen Qingqiu says to Shang Qinghua is still things that I could see Shen Yan's version of Shen Qingqiu saying, being like, well, the way that he'd be like, well, then how did you survive? Like, why are you still here? Like, I could see Shen Yan's Shen Qingqiu saying that to Shang Qinghua, but the way that MXTX writes the OG Shinju, his Shen Qingqiu, there's just this sneering and this like kind of like mocking tone to him that is just so well done that you instantly can tell the difference. And that also helps explain why Liu Qingge and Yu Qingyan, when Shen Yan possesses Shen Qingqiu, are like, you're totally different now. It's great. But I was going to go back before the Shen Qingqiu, moment where he has the dream, and in the dream he sees Master Cucumber, and in the dream he's still in the real world crying and weeping at the computer screen, and a giant man holding a thorny cucumber shaped like a hairy lower leg is thrashing at him, telling him that his writing is trash. It's so fascinating to me on two levels. One, because after that dream and after, encountering Shen Qingqiu within the world here, right before he gets promoted, which we'll talk about here in a second, here's two things that kind of stuck out for me that I realized. That back at the Immortal Alliance conference, we don't know. They say Mobei-Jun is young here. They say he's young. So we don't exactly know as the audience how much time has passed between this moment and when he meets Shen Yan as Shen Qingqiu. I'm sure you all are going to tell me in the comments how long it has been. I'm sure you're going to relay that information. But we as the audience, without doing the math, know that it's been a time, quite some time. But what's interesting to me is that Shen Qingqiu is very terrified of Shen Yan, of Peerless Cucumber. He's terrified of him as an actual person, as a human, as a writer. He's terrified of him. And also, he is also terrified of the OG Shen Qingqiu because he knows how he wrote him. He's like, I didn't write him to be a dumb villain. I didn't write him to be a pushover. No, I wrote him to be one of the main characters, and I know how smart he is, and that's what scares me, is because he's clever, and I'm maybe not the best at navigating this world without revealing too much. So I think that that's really important to know, so that when you go back and read volume 1 at the Immortal Alliance conference, when our Shen Yan as Shen Qingqiu meets Shang Qinghua, who is airplane shooting towards the sky, it's working on two different fronts. It's working on the front that Shang Qinghua is terrified of Shen Qingqiu, so he's like, why are you here? I'm not dead yet, so But it also works because when he finds out that it's Shen Yan who's transmigrated, there's another layer added to it. So he also has this predetermined view of Shen Yan and of Shen Qingqiu, and now they're combined, and it honestly makes me really excited to go back and reread the story, because I want to go back and reread and see all of those encounters, and now that I know what I know, be like, oh, that's why you reacted the way that you did. That's why this happened. So this chapter gives so much rereadability to the series that it's just like chef's kiss, right? Chef's kiss. Amazing. Love it. Love it to pieces. But yeah. So then Shen Qingqiu questions him, like, why did you survive? And then Shang Qinghua literally does a Jade Essence haul and is like, look over there. And then gets Yu Qingyan into this. I love that he kind of uses his ability as a writer to solve the problem, where he uses his ability as a writer where he's like, look, I know these two characters. I know they have backstory. I know they have history. I'm going to use it to get out of this situation. So you guys are going to talk, but because your characters are so awkward around each other and have unresolved beef, and I know about it, I know you're not going to get too involved in the discussion because it's going to make it awkward between you both, and you're both going to like quit the discussion, and one of you is going to leave. And since Shen Qingqiu, this isn't his home, he's going to be the one to leave. So Shang Qinghua is smart. Shang Qinghua is a little slimy worm. He is smart. He knows what he's doing, but he is like a shameless little hamster. And I kind of am all for it. So anyway, the best part about this whole chapter is the very end of it, where he gets Yu Qingyan to come in there, and then he's like, because Yu Qingyan, he cries all these fake tears. Just the fact that he, again, views them all as novel characters, and he cries the fake tears being like, oh no, my poor comrades, I don't know how they would. You know who he reminds me of? Have you ever watched, not the Addams Family movie, the live action, but the sequel, Addams Family Values? You know the character Debbie Jelinski, who's kind of a psychopath? I love her. She's my favorite character in that whole movie. And she has a scene where she's like going to kill one of the characters, and she's like faking being sad. And she's like, I just didn't see it coming. Like, that is Shang Qinghua. He is the Debbie Jelinski of this story. And I love it. Maybe that's why I like him so much. I'm like, I can be all for a diva character that knows they're a diva character and are trying to exploit the system with their diva-ness, and then it gets thrown back in their face and they have to deal with it. Like, I love that. That's why I love Shang Qinghua, because he knows what he's doing. He knows he's being a bitch, but he's going to try to keep doing it and get away with it because that's all he knows. And when he's caught in the act and it's thrown back in his face, he's like, well, fine, I guess I'll just work with it. And I love that, because it creates all of these options and layers and everything. Lo Binghe to me, and y'all are going to be like, quit ragging on Lo Binghe. But one of the things about him is that he always gets what he wants, and he never has to go through this motion here where he has to deal with not getting his way. And so it's kind of boring for me when Lo Binghe's like, but you don't do what I want. And then the characters do what he wants. And you're like, really? Here, Shang Qinghua's like, but you're not doing what I want. Mobei-Jun's like, no, I'm not. Do you want to die? And he's like, no. And then that makes it more interesting, because it's like, well, how's he going to deal with this? What's he going to do? So I love it. It's so damn good. I just absolutely love it. So then the best part about this episode, this chapter, is Mobei-Jun showing right back up and him saying, so you'll follow me the rest of your life, huh? At that moment, Mobei-Jun to me, like, if Mobei-Jun cares a sliver. He cares a wee bit for Shang Qinghua, because otherwise, why would he go after him? Like, Mobei-Jun is an elite demon. He doesn't need Shang Qinghua. He doesn't, it's not like Shang Qinghua revealed Mobei-Jun's secret location. I guess you could say Mobei-Jun followed him to make sure he didn't tell people about the fact that he had his kidney missing and was exposed and injured. I guess you could say that. But honestly, Mobei-Jun could have left. He could have gotten up and been like, oh, he's gone. And left and went back to the demon realm and never saw Shang Qinghua again. Now, granted, they do establish, Shang Qinghua does say that Mobei-Jun carries grudges. So if he was mad at Shang Qinghua, that would kind of be like a very Lo Binghe thing to do, to go after him and search for him and try to get some revenge. But instead, he doesn't get revenge. He's just like, I thought you said you were going to follow me. So, and then Shang Qinghua was like, well, actually, you know what? Shang Qinghua reminds me of a lot of characters in this chapter. A lot of different characters. But in that moment where he's talking to Mobei-Jun, he'd be like, I was spying for you. I was infiltrating. I've already been promoted. I've already got an inside connection. I was setting up camp, and then I was going to come find you. It reminds me of, God, I'm going to reveal my little 90s self, but from Aladdin 2, the straight-to-DVD sequel to Aladdin, Iago in that movie is my favorite character. Iago, this is kind of like Shang Qinghua is the Iago of Scum villain. He is. If Shin Qingqiu and Lo Binghe are Princess Jasmine and Aladdin, then Shang Qinghua is Iago, just with authorship powers. He is. He really is. Yeah, kind of. Sure. And in Aladdin 2, these extra chapters are essentially the Aladdin 2 of Scum villain, because in Aladdin 2 it kind of becomes Iago's story, which as a kid I loved because I loved Iago's character, and so I always loved Iago's story in Aladdin 2. But this is kind of it, except if you were shipping Iago and Jafar and they somehow worked it out at the end. That's the story. Oh my God. But it's so good. It's so good. And so, yeah, then he's like, well, allow me to explain. And he just puts on this whole act and explains all this nonsense. And Mobei-Jun's like, I feel like Mobei-Jun knows he's lying, but he showed back up to get him. There is an inkling. Do these demons just get attached to people and instantly are like, we're bonded? Are they like freaking demonic penguins? Do they just instantly get attached to a life partner and decide that's the one? Not letting them go. You have Tianlan Jun, who got attached to Su Jian and was like, nobody else. And then you have Lo Binghe, who got attached to Shen Qingqiu and was like, nobody else. And then you have, I guess you have Zhu Xilong, who got kind of attached. Well, Zhu Xilong's kind of like the of the bunch, but now you have Mobei-Jun, who's like gotten attached to Shang Qinghua and is like, nobody else right now. This little bitch right here. What? I mean, look, the size dynamic and difference between Shang Qinghua and Mobei-Jun, I'm just saying. So then Shang Qinghua admits that he is not above kissing up. He will kiss up for whatever he can. He's like, I will kiss ass all day long, which, you know what? You could also look at the idea of kissing ass as being close to another gesture involving an ass that's possibly not heterosexual. I'm just saying. And so he says, yes, there is real gold when a man kneels. So Shang Qinghua is not above being dominated. He is perfectly fine being the sub, and Mobei-Jun can be the dom. He is perfectly fine with that. He's like, I am totally chill with this. This is great. Which is very different from Shen Qingqiu. Shen Qingqiu would never admit that he's like, oh yeah, I'm down for subbing. Would not be like that at all. So Shang Qinghua is very different from him. And then he says, you know, a real man, if he's going to cry, better have a reason. What a diva. I love him so much. But yeah, he ends up getting beat up by Mobei-Jun. And Mobei-Jun's like, well, we're going to pick up where we left off tomorrow. And Shang Qinghua like, tomorrow? Continue? What? I love it. I freaking love it. It's amazing. This chapter was everything I wanted. Oh my God. There's a part of me that wishes I'd read it last week. And there's a part of me that wishes I'd combined it with next week. But next week we have 2 chapters. And I don't want this story to end yet, so I'm willing to hold off and let it go as long as it needs to. But oh my God. I love this chapter so much. This chapter was amazing. It was hilarious. It was weirdly romantic. It was like beyond any fan fiction I could hope for. The humor, the dialogue, MXTX. This is peak MXTX, back to true form. I'm here for it. I'm ready for chapter 97, 98. I'm so ready. Next week is the penultimate chapter set for Scum Villain. I'm so baffled. I don't want the story to end now. I want to read a whole book of Shang Qinghua. I'm just... the only thing I can hope is that next week, both chapters are dedicated to him. I hope so. I really do. So, honestly, I'm so excited to hear y'all's thoughts down below. But I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yes, I cannot wait to hear your chapter thoughts as we dive in to chapters 97 and 98 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. Bye!